Greetings to all C3RF members and friends across Canada and indeed around the world, and a special welcome to the folks at Veterans for Freedom on their dedicated streaming channels as they view this video summary of the C3RF update for 2 May 2025. The title of this update is True Colors, and it begins by noting that although election 2025 may be behind us, it has left a legacy of division and acrimony. What else to say when journalists of certain stripes were pilloried and insulted as they tried to ask pointed questions at the conclusion of both the French and English federal leadership debates. In the case of the French debate, representatives from True North, Juno News, and Rebel News were labeled as right-wing and accused of overstepping their welcome by dominating the question and answer period. Indeed, give and take was flatly rejected by the leader of the NDP party, who refused to answer questions from the Rebel News contingent. Instead, he accused them without justification of being spreaders of disinformation. Then again, this was light fare compared to the Donnybrook that unfolded the next night during the English debate. At the end of the English debate, the, quote, bully boys, thugs, and unhinged, unquote, independent journalists would create a ruckus when they began to organize themselves to participate in the leader's scrum. CTV News and Global Mail participants took offense and reported that there were, quote, security concerns, unquote, with the actions of the loonies. Accordingly, the debate commissioner's executive director, Michel Cormier, announced that he was sorry that there would be, quote, will be no scrum tonight with the leaders because we don't feel that we can actually guarantee a proper environment for this activity, unquote. It was at this point that the legacy media would show their true colors. And instead of petitioning for a compromise of some sort to keep the scrum alive, they turned on the independent media with insult and invective, calling them, quote, rage farmers, unquote, dedicated to fattening their own wallets. The fact that the true colors of our MSM have little to do with informing the public on the policy stances of political parties and their leaders are more about shaping narratives to benefit some over others is plain to see. What to think when CBC political anchors Rosemary Barton and David Cochrane did a quick about-face from covering the debaters to go full force on the need to discredit independent media, Rebel News in particular, to keep them from asking questions. This even though the courts had already ruled in 2019 and 2021 elections that Rebel News had every right to participate in the 2025 election process by asking prospective prime ministers questions. Indeed, the courts also ruled that it mattered not that Rebel News was registered as a third-party advocacy group. A fact that MSM bobbleheads tried to use unsuccessfully as a cause for having the independents deep-sixed. One could be forgiven for believing that the legacy media is the pot calling the kettle black when it comes to using its voice to advocate for a particular political viewpoint. Long gone are the days when its primary purpose was to, quote, inform the public through fair, balanced, accurate, and objective reporting accompanied by a range of opinion, unquote. Surely if these days were still with us, we would be seeing them spend a little more ink and paper on the foreign interference scams that bedeviled the conservative candidates like Joe Tay. Mr. Tay is a former Hong Kong civil liberties advocate, and now, according to the government's own election interference task force, was the target of a, quote, transnational repression operation, unquote. This repression would include efforts in Chinese social media platforms to discredit Mr. Tay, and even suggestions by candidate Paul Chang to turn Tay in to collect a bounty for his arrest by Chinese authorities. One would think that honest news organizations would set themselves upon this transnational repression operation like honey badgers, especially given the fact that Mark Carney would initially give the bounty hunter Paul Chang a pass, noting that his faux pas was simply, quote, a teachable moment, unquote. And then to add insult to injury, Carney would go on to replace Chang with an equally compromised candidate in the form of retired Deputy Police Chief Peter Wan. What to think when, quote, videos and a report posted on the Toronto Chinese Consulate's website show that in 2017, Peter Wan attended a gala hosted by the Confederation of Toronto Chinese Canadian Organizations, an association with direct ties to the Chinese consulate and Beijing's United Front Work Department, unquote. The legacy media would respond to such scurrilous and anti-democratic developments with crickets. It could be argued that the onset of media crickets is not about dishonesty, but rather a disinterested and uncurious mindset. That excuse doesn't really hold water, though, when one considers the lengths to which these same scribes will go to track down and exploit chinks in the far right's armor. Give them a whiff of a hidden abortion agenda, and you have an instantaneous feeding frenzy. It's blood in the water, just as it would be if Canada's failing healthcare or climate change programs came under attack. At the end of the day, it must be admitted, Canadian legacy media has a bias problem that is fully capable of generating false narratives in the name of securing a preferred end. Isn't it odd that Mr. Carney could claim that there are only two genders when such a statement would set the cat amongst the pigeons if they were uttered by a far-right operative? Then again, he's full of the right or left stuff. The fact that the Canadian media had a soft spot in its heart for Mr. Carney was more than evident in their treatment of his accreditations. He had an Oxford PhD in economics and, by extension, was more than capable of bringing a raging orange man bad to heel. This assessment was bolstered by his placement as a governor of not one but two central banks in the form of Canada and the United Kingdom. What is not related, however, is his controversial departure from the Bank of England and his reputation as a political player intent on serving globalist ends. He would come away from the job with spectacularly critical assessments from former UK Prime Minister Liz Truss. She would call him out for doing a, quote, terrible job, unquote, with his predilection for money printing, net zero spending, and WEF ideologies. Indeed, she would see in his selection as leader of the Liberal Party as puzzling and wonder if illegitimacy was at play. The not-so-subtle puffing up of the Carney image by the legacy media is also puzzling by virtue of his inexplicable treatment of the sovereignty issue. When it comes to defending Canada from becoming the 51st state, it's all about Carney having the royal jelly to back Orange Man Bad down. Forget about how concerned Canadians should be when they see his track record as the governor of the Central Bank of England, where he distinguished himself as a post-national asset intent on printing the money required to feed globalist projects. These would include reckless migration, moving away from fossil fuels, and otherwise crushing the United Kingdom's carbon footprint. How concerned should Canadians be when they see him select Mark Wiseman, co-founder of the Century Initiative, and environment firebrand Jonathan Wilkinson to advise him on the immigration and natural resource files, respectively? Does Canada remain sovereign if it displaces its relationship with the United States with one centered on the New World Order? It's one thing for the legacy media to spit-shine the image of a party leader of its own choosing, but quite another for it to full-out censor one it disfavors. How else to explain the shameless treatment of Maxime Bernier of the People's Party of Canada throughout the length and breadth of election 2025? It did not matter that he and his party proposed a unique platform that emphasized the very thing that the other parties proclaimed as sacrosanct, that being sovereignty. These platform prescriptions included a defense of, quote, bodily autonomy, freedom of conscience, free speech, and national sovereignty, unquote, all covered under an umbrella of Canada First. Positions that, as National Newspaper Award winner Peter Menzies notes, Canadians are not worthy to be apprised of. Indeed, in a twist on the Don Cherry "You People" controversy, our own media has even taken to calling these malcontents, quote, these people, unquote. Mr. Menzies wonders if this same media will be forgiven by those it considers beneath its contempt. What do you think? In closing, a reminder to join us at CanadianCitizens.org, where you can see this update in its full glory, including links to all of the cited documents. Simply go to the News tab at the top of the page and select C3RF Member Updates from its drop-down menu. Until next time, this is Russ Cooper signing off, wishing you and yours much happiness and freedom from C3RF.